I'm absolutely thrilled to be working in partnership with Women Ed to put on this session. I've seen so many tweets about people with unsuccessful applications, trainees, people applying for SLT roles, all sorts really. But before I pass over to Vivienne, I'd just like you to let you know about another opportunity that we've got coming up. We've got a session called Your Year of Being a Braver and More Confident You with Palm Plummer, and it is on Tuesday the 18th of May. And I don't know if you know already, but Palm is another leader from Women Ed, who I actually heard talk the first time the other day on Teacher Talk Radio. She's incredibly knowledgeable, easy to listen to, and as someone who suffers with imposter syndrome myself, I actually can't wait for the session. So what I might do is I might pop the link in the chat box to that session if anyone else is interested. Over to you, Vivienne.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you for collaborating with Women Ed to put on this series of 4 webinars, and this is our second one. And as you say, Palm is next, and Palm and I are both members of the strategic leadership team of Women Ed. What I'm going to do, in case there is anybody remotely on Twitter who doesn't know anything about Women Ed or in this webinar, I'm going to take us through what Women Ed is doing and exactly why this particular webinar is really at the heart of what drew us to create Women Ed and at the heart of all of the work that we do at the moment. Then I'll move straight into the advice I feel I can give to you to help you write applications that are going to get better results. My experience is as a previous secondary head teacher, as a chair of governors, as a senior leader at the Institute of Education, and since I offered to help with application forms, I've read a lot of those from women in particular, and I've worked and coached with them to help them be much more clear on what it is they want to tell people about. So I hope this is useful and love to see in the chat your questions, and I'm going to give you times to have a go at some of the points, so I'd love to see those in the chat as well. I'm going to share my screen. And this is for Women Ed, ours and yours, we hope, year of being 10% braver. And you'll hear being more brave, be courageous, challenge. You'll hear a lot of these words throughout this evening, because we think they're central to how to help women to develop more confidence, particularly in applying for roles. This is Women Ed's mission. A lot of men have a leadership trajectory that looks like the ladder approach straight up, whereas we have learned that more women have a leadership journey that means they go onto a step on the climbing frame, they go sideways, they go up 2, they come back 1, they come off altogether, they come back in. And none of that matters. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to progress to the next career stage or leadership stage. You're all working until you're 68 anyway from now on. So honestly, you've got plenty of time to do it in the way that is right for you. What we have learned, however, is that there are barriers to that career progress for women at times. And we've put together a series of values, our 8 C's. We are a values-driven organisation, and we believe these issues and these values support and empower women to make the choices that they want to make and to achieve and to reach their ambition and their goals. We challenge individual women to be more brave, 10% braver. We challenge organisations and we challenge the system in which we find that there is inequity for women in their career at certain points and in certain ways. We do our work through networks. Women Ed is led by volunteers, and we work through networks. And we now have 34 of those because Manitoba in Canada and British Columbia in Canada have just joined us. And we know there's one more in Canada coming, and we know there are 3 regions in Germany coming. The networks are the way in which we collaborate and support other women as close as where we can to where they live and work. And I do like sharing this because it gives you the spread, doesn't it? And we're in conversations with Ethiopia, with Vietnam at the moment. And I was in a conversation earlier today where a colleague was saying, I've got contacts in South Africa, they're really interested. So hopefully we can move across the continents now. And we've got the dot right at the bottom, which is the Falkland Islands, which is a fabulous network. So we have country networks and then regional networks that support and empower each other. We also have some very, very effective allies for Women Ed. We use the he for she hashtag, which comes from the United Nations. And we believe it's important that men play their part in supporting other women leaders to join. Claire, oh, sorry, it doesn't matter. I'm just getting a message from Facebook, but I can't give you that. Never mind. I'm getting messages all over the place. So we want men to support women to lead, given that women are the predominant majority in our workforce. 75% of the education workforce in schools are women. And yet, if you follow Women Ed, you'll know that they're not treated in equitable ways at times. Just to give you an example of our impact very quickly, we are nearing 40,000 followers on Twitter, going to have a big celebration when that happens. Our events happen regularly. We'll be closing on 10,000 events by the end of this year. We have lots of collaborations and collaborating with Innovate Teaching School Partnership via Claire with these events. We've been delighted to be recognised as an outstanding diversity network and now nominated for a Freddie Award because of our diversity focus. We also have partnerships with the National College of Education in England for a leadership master's, but also, and this is brand new news, we're collaborating with the NCE on a research master's, which is available globally. And in particular, we're very, very proud to have published 2 books because we want to reach more women than use social media. And I want to particularly highlight 10% Braver, our first book, because there's a whole chapter in that book written by the wondrous Jill Berry, all about how to get a job, applications, interviews. So that chapter, I would say, is a must for everybody here this evening. So that's 10% Braver, our first book. And in our second book, Being 10% Braver, there are stories of women who were brave and how they went about securing their ambitions or their goals or their desires. And there are several chapters in there about women applying for promotions and what it took for them to do that and what they learned and the advice that they share. So those are more personal stories, and both books together, I would say, work very complementary, particularly if you want to gain your ambitions and your goals. When the event is finished, I will share the video once we can get it on YouTube, and I'll also share the slides with you. And this one will be a live slide because it's all the links to our social media channels, and the link to the newsletter is in our website. So you can sign up and keep in touch all the time, particularly if you don't tend to use social media. So we're coming to the heart of why we wanted to do this event. We have these 4 campaigns which we believe will help address the barriers for women in their career in education and leadership. Particularly for this event, we're wanting to support you to increase the representation of women in leadership roles. And to do that, we need a pipeline of women. So we want to support you, whether it's going to be your first job, your second job, your first leadership post, wherever you are on your journey. And we also want to increase the diversity of women in leadership roles. We also want to advocate for flexible working practices, because the lack of those sometimes stop women applying for particular jobs. And we want to reduce the inequity of the very large gender pay gap in education, and the application process itself can increase that gender pay gap. So I'll come back to that point shortly. So to the heart of what we're doing this evening, then, we are helping you to write an application that gets results, that has you pumping your fists into the air and shouting yes, because you've got that interview, you've got the shortlist. And what I particularly hope you will feel as a result of today is that the application that you write is central to what you want to communicate at an interview. They're not 2 separate processes. They're all the same process. And also, as part of the process, I really want to help you understand that an interview is a 2-way process. I know you want to get the job if you've got the interview, but the whole of this recruitment process is a 2-way process. A school, an organisation is interviewing you to see if you fit the role. You are also interviewing them to be sure that the school's values align with your values, that the way they work is the way you want to work, that they will support you, they will develop you. And if you don't get those feelings that say, this is the right place for me, think carefully about whether you would want to work there. Most jobs in teaching are tough enough. You don't want to make it harder for you if the school and yourself are not aligned. So please see the process of application and interview as a 2-way process. These are the aspects we're going to work through: being authentic and believing in yourself, and then how you translate that into a killer application. And they both are central and important. So we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty. Being authentic. Now, this is quite an interesting phrase, really. When we can start having proper visitors into our houses again, think about what would happen there. If your in-laws were coming to visit you for your house, I absolutely know you would tidy up. I absolutely know that stuff you don't want other people to see will be shoved into a cupboard and the door firmly shut. And think of an interview as your in-laws visiting you, just to see how you all are, and to see, maybe they're your prospective in-laws. You're going to tidy up even more, aren't you? We want to show ourselves, but we want to show the best of ourselves in an application form. And believe you me, I've seen lots of application forms that basically tell a school everything that somebody feels they are not very good at. That's not what an application form is about, and it's not what we mean by being authentic. Absolutely, absolutely, it's really important that you put the best of yourself forward without losing yourself. And to do that, you have to believe in yourself. And that's hard for us as women very often, for all kinds of reasons that Women Ed explore in so many of our events. So this is the very, very first thing I want you to be able to write. I want you to be able to write a sentence that starts with I am. And I gave you an example there. I'm an effective teacher. I'm an expert teacher. Would you go as far as I'm an inspirational teacher? What would you say about yourself? Or I'm a strong, effective head teacher. What can you say about yourself as a teacher or a leader? So what I'd like you to do in the chat, this is the being 10% braver bit, I want you to write a very short sentence beginning that starts with I am and says something authentic about you, but also true, that you believe and you know. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, please. A few minutes. I am. Say something about yourself that you believe and that puts your best face forward. Is something that you do that is really well, that you do really, really well. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment to see what's going on in the chat. Whoa, numbers jumping up. Oh, I'm a dedicated classroom teacher. I'm an experienced teacher. I'm a strong department leader. Oh, Dana, oh, hello. I'm a change maker. That's what we want to hear. Yes. Fabulous. Excellent communicator, confident middle leader, inclusive teacher. That's a super adjective. Right. I'm not sure all 143 of you have written that. So, oh, I like that. An innovative leader from Kelly. Thank you. Keep it going. Now, Corinna, experienced senior leader, but I've been out of school for the past 3 years. No buts allowed. No buts allowed. Always change but to and. If you tempted to put but in an application form, change it immediately to and. It comes across as so much more positively. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, what I'd like you to add to the chat now is how did that feel to write that? We're doing it in a safe space, aren't we? In the confines of a safe space. How did it feel? Liberating and empowering and uncomfortable. Difficult. Yeah, why do women find it difficult? So many different reasons that we can't go into tonight, or we'd be here all evening. But embarrassing, difficult, insightful. We have to do this. This is the 10% braver bit, isn't it? And you have to be it. Oh, yes. So this is the imposter syndrome coming up. Worried to say it in case somebody thinks, who on earth is she to think that? Well, who we are expert, strong, powerful educators. And we need to accept that. If we don't believe it, nor will the people who read your application form, and nor will they believe it at interview. So I don't know what, like you, but if imposter syndrome is really strong with you, then this is what I do if I want to present my best foot forward. I don't know if you can tell because I keep trying to hide it on Zoom, but I'm very pale. And at this time of the year, when the sun's coming out, I'm very conscious personally that my legs are, I can't even begin to describe the shade of white they are. My face is pale, my hands are pale. So I put tinted moisturizer on all the time, and it gradually builds up so that I look a bit closer to the color that other people look ordinarily. So if we're very happy to fake the color of our hair, to fake the color of our skin, to fake our nails, whatever it is that we fake, if you're very happy to do that, then fake confidence until it becomes an absolute part of you. And it's essential to be able to do that. And if it is difficult to do it, you've got to practice in the mirror. It's almost as if you've got homework from this session and you have to find 100 ways of saying what you believe in yourself and what you can do. So that's your homework. That's your first job. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Except it's not going to let me go to where I was. Right. So now in an application, you've got to write about those sentences and those phrases you've just added there. And when we send you the chat after this, you can borrow everybody else's as well, and it'll be super. You've got to be able to say what you've done. Look at writing about your strengths. I secured swift improvements. Can you write that kind of way of phrasing? What have you secured in your own teaching and in your leadership? And if it's your first post or you are an NQT, you have secured things within your teaching. You've got to be able to write factually about yourself. And if you can't, ask somebody else to tell you what it is that is your strength. Ask them, or imagine you writing down what your friend or your colleague would say about you. So use of language in application forms is really important. And this is another key point I want to make. You have to be able to write a sentence such as, I secured swift improvements, without saying, when I first took on this class, there were a lot of students struggling, and it took me a while to think about how could I help them improve. Don't want any of that. That's a story. Don't tell a story in an application form. Present in the application form the best of yourself. Think of that in-law analogy. The cupboards are shut, everything's closed. It's just what you want somebody to see and know about yourself. Right, so that was nearly easy for a lot of people. So you've got to keep practicing as we go through. I want you to think of the kind of positive language you could use. So I've just created a list of verbs. They're not all verbs. Strategic isn't a verb, some are adjectives. But you can change verbs into adjectives anyway, can't you? These are the kind of words that you can be using. When I write application forms, I just get my thesaurus out and I use all the words that I possibly can from it. And they should be those words should be followed, these words should follow I, the word I. You can use we at some times, we achieved, but not a lot, because you are applying yourself as you, what you have done. So even if you said we achieved this as a team, you need to describe what you did within that achievement. So you'll get all these words to use, but think about tense as well. In my view, if you can use the present tense and the future tense for most of your application, it's going to be a very punchy application. It's going to be a very positive, confident one. If you're always using past tense, even about the work you are currently doing, or the learning or the class you worked with, then it starts to feel as if it's all history. And they want to know your strengths and your skills as you are now. You can draw on past experience, absolutely. You could have secured swift improvements in a previous class or a previous role, but you're always trying to say how that's helped you do what you're doing now. And I'll come back to using the future tense shortly. Right, also still on language. I'm an ex-English teacher, and I think the language that you use really does communicate or not communicate your best strengths. And sadly, when I read a lot of applications from women, I see a lot of limiting language in it. So I've given you some words there that you should not use in your application at all. And it's easy enough to just put those words into the document and just find if you're saying them because it's a habit and just get rid of them. So never use just or only, or that's dreadful. No, we mustn't use those words. And don't say you've got a sound knowledge of something. They don't want to know what sound knowledge you've got. They want to know what strength you have in your knowledge. Sound is like opening that cupboard when your in-law comes round and letting them see. Don't say you would like to, say you will. I would like to apply for this role. Get rid of all of that. I am applying. Present or future tense, if possible. And never, never, never say you've been fortunate enough to be a head of department, or you were lucky to become a head of department, or you were lucky to gain an NQT post. You're not lucky, you're not fortunate, you're skilled and expert, and all of your strengths are why that you obtained those roles. So fortunate or lucky, that gets crossed out as well. And please don't strive, just do it. You're not striving to improve, you are improving. Present tense, always. And don't say that you will make sure you do something, just ensure you will do it. And don't say, I believe I can. Now then, if we were able to be talking here, you would all do a resounding chorus of, I would say, what would you say instead of, I believe I can? Claire, you can speak, so you have to speak. I pick on you all the time. Instead of saying, I believe I can, you will say,
I can.
I can, woo. Just start with I and make it present tense whenever possible. And please don't say you were allowed to lead something, because that sounds as if you needed permission. And I know some of you are sitting there going, oh no, I've used all of those words in some of my previous applications. And please don't say you'll be pleased to do something, you just will do it. And if you want to think more about limiting language, there's a link there that you'll get when we send these to you, which is an article I wrote for TES about why we've got to stop saying sorry. We've got to remove apologetic and limiting language from our application forms. And that's part of believing in ourselves. Really important. Okay. So we now believe in ourselves and we can know our strengths and write our strengths. The other element that I think is fundamental to an application form, and women miss this, is knowing your impact and evidencing it. So if you're struggling to know your strengths, you may feel that you can't really talk about your own impact. So I want to help with that. You need to be able to talk about your impact in any role you have, but you also need to evidence it. When I was a chair of governors reading a lot of applications for senior leader posts, those that could evidence their impact rose to the top of the pile. They just elevated themselves up and hovered above all of the others. And they were just going straight into the yes pile. And you've got to avoid simply asserting impact. And asserting impact is saying something such as, I improved outcomes for pupils. I don't think anybody would write an application form without saying that. So imagine there's 20 applications that the new school is choosing from. If 18 of them all say that, then you're not being authentic to yourself. You're not representing your own skills and expertise. You have to evidence the impact. And this is my patented sentence that you've got to practice. This is essential. So instead of simply asserting that you improved outcomes for pupils, you need to say, I improved pupil outcomes from what they were previously in that year to what they are now in this year. So you're showing the depth of improvement and you're showing the pace of improvement. And that sentence can be replicated in whatever it is that you want to describe as impact. I was helping somebody write an application form last week about becoming head of sixth form in a secondary school. And she wanted to show that she could increase the number of year 11 students wanting to join the sixth form. So I increased the number of sixth form entries from this in this year to this in this year. And I would say you want several examples of those pieces of evidence in all kinds of your different strengths. And that's really important. That levitates your application form to the top of the pile, because that intrigues the people reading them. They want to know how you did that. They want to know whether that would work for them in their school, because that's what they're going to pay you to do. Now, this is tough. It's hard work to do. And sometimes you've got to go and find some of the data, but you need evidence of impact, no assertion. The other element you need to know are the needs of the new school. And this is something that so many people miss, men and women. When I'm reading an application form, I don't want to do any work. The only work I want to do is to kind of go, oh, yes, I'm interested in that person, put them in the yes pile. That's the only work I want to do. I already know, as the person reading the application, I know the criteria, I know the person spec, I know all of that. I simply want to know whether you meet that person spec. So you might say, I achieved improved outcomes by, and you tell the actions that you've said, and you tell how you implemented them. What you've got to add into your thinking is you have to write as if you were already in the new role. That is the one most golden piece of advice I ever received. Write your application as if you are already in the role for which you are applying, and reference it. And this is where the will comes in. So this is where the future tense comes in. So as head of Key Stage 3, 2, sixth form, literacy, numeracy, early years, pupil premium, whatever it is the role is, as at the role, I will, when you appoint me, in brackets, that's in your head, as head of Key Stage 3, I will apply the strategies I achieved to improve pupil outcomes by doing this to help you. You're saying what the school needs to improve. So I achieved improved outcomes by these actions and this implementation. As head of literacy, I will apply such strategies to improving, and that's where your research into the school has come in. So you know what Ofsted said they're working on in the recruitment materials or the advert. They'll have said what they're interested for in the person spec, and you can research by talking to everybody in the women ed community to see if they know who's read anything about the school. You can search their own website to find out what they're working on, and you need to explain how you can help them. Now, this is fundamental, and too many people miss it out. It means you've got to have done your research, and you've got to have a confident voice to say, okay, I have achieved this, I have done this, this is how I made that impact. At your school, I can and I will.
Vivienne, there's a question from Kirsten that's just come in. Do you recommend contacting the school to ask for their priorities before applying for the position?
I think I'd probably do that more if you were applying for a leadership position, because it's more that you are going to be addressing those priorities in a leadership role. I think there's absolutely nothing lost by contacting the school for any kind of documentation, really. Rather than just saying, tell me what your priorities are or your improvement, what's your improvement plan. Could ask for a SEF, a copy of a self-evaluation form, if schools are still doing it. You could ask to go and visit the school. You can do any and all of those things as long as you do it as appropriately to the role itself. But this is important, both for your application and your interview. You absolutely need to know what the school wants from you and what they're going to pay you to achieve. And people often don't do that. They miss that bit out. Now then, I'm going to finish in terms of sharing some ideas with you, and then we'll start looking at what you can practice in the chat and what it is we can have a question and answer about. So again, this is my patented approach. I like applications that are very clear, that are very straightforward, easy to read, and where the strengths of a person shine out from the page. They are put forefront of the application. You can almost see little starlights over the strengths being shown. So, rule number 1, do not tell a story, which means you've got to keep reducing the words that aren't needed. You're not in an application telling a story about yourself. That's probably going to happen more in the interview. So what you're wanting to do in an application is to help people select you for the shortlist for the interview. So your introduction should be very clear. I read a lot of introductions on the personal statement that says, I am applying for the role of this at this school. Well, they already know that because you've applied. And on the application form, you've said that you are applying. So that's a waste of words. And if everybody, and an awful lot of people do, start their application with that kind of phrase, then you're already kind of sinking into the maybe or the no part. So avoid that. Don't repeat in your personal statement what's already clear on your application form. So I've given you a simple introduction, and it's a direct introduction. I am attracted by the role of at your school, or name the school, because opening sentence. So what is it about their school that is really attracting you to want to work there? You know, that's telling the head teacher of the school or a governor. That's telling them what's really good about their school. You want to get them on your side, and you can do that by, it's not flattery, it's truth, but by telling them what's really good about their school and the role, and that's why you want to join. Now, I don't want 200 people after this all writing the same sentence, because we'll be in trouble with that. But I am what by the role, intrigued by, keen to. Play with your thesaurus, but direct introduction. No whiffy-waffy stuff at the beginning with words that aren't needed or are duplications. Get to the point. In essence, as an English teacher, what you're doing on the personal statement is answering a question. So imagine the question is, why should we interview you? Answer the question. I hope that's very straightforward. So no story. Don't go back to that amazing experience you had at university that made you want to be a teacher. That's for the interview. Tell them what they need to know and that you want them to know. And in the conclusion, you more or less say exactly the same thing, but in a different way. I am attracted by this role. In the conclusion, you add in why they should want you. Introduction, why you want this school and this role. Conclusion, why they want you for this role at this school. So you're topping and tailing with those reasons. And then you've got all the paragraphs in between. 5, 6, maybe. And this, I think, is the secret to a lot of applications. Within each paragraph, those 4 bullet points should be included in a paragraph. What's the strength or the skill you are offering that meets the person's specification or the requirements? What's the evidence of impact that shows you demonstrating that skill? What are the strategies or the actions you used to bring about that impact? And why this is what the new school needs. Those 4 points should be in every single paragraph. So you're picking out maybe your 5 or your 6 strengths, or you are answering the way they have asked you to structure the personal statement. They might ask you to talk about pedagogy, relationships with students, your professional development. If they give you headings, use the headings. But under each heading, you have to have those 4 things. And it doesn't matter what order you put them in. You could write 1 paragraph with that order. You could start a second killer paragraph with evidence of impact right up front of the first sentence of the paragraph. I improved literacy in year 6 from this to this in this time frame. opening sentence to a paragraph. Brilliant. Then you can say the strategies you use, the strength or the skills you demonstrated, and why this is what the new school needs. You could start a paragraph with what you know the new school needs. So you would start with, as head of Key Stage 1 in the new school, 2, and then whatever it is they need, I demonstrated this strength and skill by these strategies, and here's the evidence of impact. You want to mix the order up in each paragraph, otherwise it sounds a little bit robotic. And to have 5 or 6 paragraphs for that particular role in that school, you want maybe a bank of 10 paragraphs. So from going at the beginning of this webinar to saying, oh, it's a bit difficult to write about one of my strengths, I now want you to have 10 strengths, 10 skills you want to showcase. And you've got a bank of those then, so that you can choose the right strength, the right skill, the right evidence of impact for what that particular school needs. The application must be personalised to that school, but your strength and skills are going to be used in different ways in different schools. And if you can get that bank of paragraphs right, those are your answers to the questions you get asked at interview. And if you've got the 10 paragraphs in your head, whatever question they're going to ask you, you have the knowledge that you want to share with them in your answer. And it really is as simple, yet as tough as that. You have to be comfortable in talking about yourself in an application form. You have to be clear on what you offer and what you believe about your strengths and skills. You have to have gathered your evidence of impact, and you have to know how that matches what this school needs. And it's that level of clarity and communication of what you can offer and what you are looking for from them that will help you reach the shortlist.
Vivienne, there's a couple of questions just come in on that that part of the session.
So I was just going to then say now, so in your year of 10% braver, how are you going to be that? So this is the part where we can answer the questions, but the first answer to each question is be 10% braver to every single question. And we really want to help you to be able to achieve that. Off we go with the questions then.
I was just going to say, Abby said, would you suggest writing a paragraph for each point on the person spec? Yeah, on the person spec. Yeah, Abby told us that one from.
Depends how long the person spec is, because some run to like 47 bullet points, and you can't do that then. But if you've got a very clear knowledge of what the school really, really, really wants in terms of their priority plans or their Ofsted or what they say on their website, then you can group aspects of the person spec more confidently and more clearly. No one person can ever meet the person spec in a teaching or a leadership role. So it's about trying to find the match between what you can offer and what the school needs. And those are your absolute clarifications within the personal statement. I hope that helps as an answer to that question.
There's a couple more asking about how long should a personal statement be? There's a few of those.
No more than 2 sides of A4 unless they ask for more. And you can't do 2 sides of A4 with font 6. I would always recommend font 12, if possible. If you are getting a bit squeezed, then you could do 11. But no fancy fonts either at all. Definitely don't use Comic Sans, mustn't use anything like that. Font 12 or 11, 2 sides, definitely.
11.5 if you don't want it to be obvious.
Yes. If they ask, I just saw that from Soviet, if they ask for a CV in education, I'd find that quite strange, because most ask for a formal application form and a personal statement. They ask for a CV, do a CV. And at the beginning of your CV, you should put your 5 strengths. So almost like the introductory sentence of the 5 paragraphs you've got in your personal statement. Okay, any more questions?
I did write another one. So there was a question early on that I've sort of saved, and it was from Siobhan, who said she's had a career break and she'd find it difficult writing in the present tense and the future tense because she's had that little career break. What would you say to her?
You then use the past tense about your previous roles. I would also say, however, you must give the reason for the career break rather than, ignoring it. And there will be things from your career break that you have learned during that. And if those skills are able to be transferred, then I would definitely highlight what you gained from your career break and how that would benefit you in the new role and the new post.
Any more? Somebody asked if there is any good places to find sample personal statements, but given what you've said, I think that's a very individual thing, isn't it? And possibly what someone else has written isn't necessarily going to apply to you.
I'm going to be 10% braver now and say that most personal statements don't do what I'm telling you to do or what I'm sharing with you to do, because they tend to tell a story, and that really doesn't work. I was very proud recently that a man I helped with his application, he's done several, but he got his headship finally recently, and the chair of governors said to him that it was the best application letter he'd ever read, because he came across as him with his expertise, his strengths, his knowledge of what the school wanted, and his evidence. And those are the key things that people are looking for. So by all means, get some samples, cross out all the language that you don't want to use very positive language, and insert your examples and your evidence into it.
Just looking for does all evidence need to be quantitative, or can it be qualitative?
Can be absolutely can be qualitative. It's still got to follow that same example. It was this before, now it's this. It's a before and after picture that they are looking for. Qualitative is just a little bit harder to be able to give the evidence for. So if it's from a survey and it's about people's feelings or expectations, then that's what you'd be quoting as well. Even if you don't put numbers in, it would be the, 3/4 of the class thought this at the beginning, everyone in the class said this at the end. So you can use children's words, parents' words, Ofsted's words as qualitative in that way.
Someone earlier, I've forgotten the name, I can't find it now, asked whether you should reference where you got the information about the school. Should you say, I would like to improve this from the Ofsted report? Should you mention the Ofsted report?
Personally, I wouldn't, because there are so many more schools being sensible and not structuring everything they do because it's for Ofsted. They will know you've got access to the Ofsted report. They know you could read their website. So I don't think that's needed, really. You would just find a way of saying, as one of your priorities is. There was a question about, I just saw one come up there about if somebody said when she asked a school for a SEF, they said no, they wouldn't give it because it would give people an unfair advantage. That's bizarre, if I may say so, because they should want to give everybody the same advantage by sharing their SEF. That's where you might start thinking, is that school aligned to what I would want to be, how I would want to be working? So have a think about whether some of the responses you get mean, do I or do I not want to apply there? And if you do get the interview and you decide that day that the school's not right for you, that's fine as well. Absolutely fine as well. And if you do want to speak to me, the person who's just put that question, then send an email to womenedleaders@gmail.com and mark it for Vivienne Porritt. Okay, mark it for Vivienne Porritt, and I'll see what I can do or find somebody else that can help. Yes, it is normal to be given details for a senior leadership post quite early on. It's not good practice, but I'm afraid it does happen. It really does happen. It's very frustrating, but at least everybody is also in the same boat with that. I'm really sorry about that. You should get plenty of time to help, to be able to read the document, read the information, and put your best self forward. I think we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you so much for joining in. Please keep the conversation going on Twitter or by email. If it's Twitter, follow us at WomenEd. I'm at Vivienne Porritt, and that information's in the Eventbrite posting that you saw. Anything we can do to help as a community, let us know, but mostly join in the conversation, because everybody in our WomenEd community wants to help. And that's the strength and the power of all of us lifting each other up. Really looking forward to talking with you on Twitter. The recording will come out to everybody that's got a ticket, plus the chat, plus some other resources to help. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you at another WomenEd event. As Claire said, there's one coming up in May. And also, if you go on our website, womened.org, you'll see all our other events. Lots more to join in with. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, everyone.